Okay, good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining this webinar on upcoming changes to lab orders in Galway. We'll be covering a overview of what this change is, along with any prerequisites. We'll then go into a demonstration and then a quick Q&A at the end. If you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll pick them up as we go along, or we'll answer them at the end. I'm joined by Ronan, the support lead for HPM, who will be leading the demonstration, along with colleagues from across the HSE, HealthLink and Galway as well. This webinar will also be recorded and will be made available later as well. So with all that said, over to you, Ronan.
Perfect. Thanks, Million. Hi, everybody. I'll just share out my screen now, so bear with me. Okay. So firstly, you'll have gotten a letter sent out. I have an example of the letter here. It's a checklist. You need to go through the checklist and fill it out and send it back to Galway. You'll also need to send a test lab order to Galway in advance of using it. Okay. The next thing to check, the lab ordering section has been out a while. So as long as you're on version, if you go to help and about, as long as you're on version 3.8.0.5 or later, you'll have the option for lab ordering. It's worth mentioning as well that you need a HealthLink certificate on the machine you're sending a lab order from. So you'll need to contact HealthLink and install one of these. You'll also need to have a printer installed on the machine you're doing the lab order on. HPM will actually select the default printer from the dialog box, but it'll be pointing at your default printer. So just to be aware of this, if your default printer is not something you want to print to. So we'll open up a patient now. We have a patient open here, and we go into the patient demographics. You can see that all the correct information is populated once it loads up. And this was ultra fast for me, and now it's really slow. So everything is populated there. So to do a lab order, you can do it in two areas. You can go to exams. You can click on the little drop down here and select lab order, or you can go into documents and click on lab order. So we'll just do that now. And then down the bottom here, you just click on add. Okay. And you have your hospital type here. So you just select the hospital and you'll see in the list you have University Hospital Galway. And then you have the option here, lab order. So you just click on next. And this is loading up from HealthLink now. So you can see it's brought in all the patient details. So you just have to enter in the clinical details here. Anything at all, I'll pop in. And then here you select your lab order. So we'll just click on FSH. We'll just select one. And we select two. So once you've selected those two, then you just click on review. And as long as you're happy, what you can do is if you're not happy, you can amend tests. Or if you're happy, you just click on commit order. Then you get the reminder to provide the specimens. You click OK on that. And once you've done that, you get your lab order request there in the background. And as you can see, you have your print options here. Okay. So that's it in a nutshell. I just wanted to show one other thing. I just want to run through the favorite section. So if I add another lab order here, and click next. When it opens up, like if you have a set of tests that you use a lot, you can click on Manage Favorites and then click on Create New List. And we select the Galway Hospital, and then we just call this. And then we just hit Next. And then here you can select your different labs and click on Review. And then click on Save Favorite. And then if I just close this again and go back in, it should be in the drop-down list for you to select. So if I just you just click on that, and then you can see it's got the labs there for you, and those favorites are saved. So it'll save you if you have a particular suite of tests that you use a lot, you can save it as a favorite, and it'll save you time. That's basically it. It's pretty straightforward. The orders are saved in the patient's chart, and then to view them or reprint them, you just double click on them. And once the order has been placed in the queue, it'll be acknowledged, and the status will be updated once the user does their next HealthLink download. But just to note, there's no update to the lab order status when the actual results come in. Those results come in and they're in the exam section. So just to be aware of that. That's it really. Is there any questions at all, or?
Just one thing to point out there, Ronan, is that as a result of this, some of the lab or exam codes coming back in are going to be changed, and some of the test codes will be changed. So you might run through the mapping aspect of it for HKM.
I got some. I have some test labs there. So basically, what will happen is as Mary said, some of the tests will come back, and they'll need to be rematched because obviously the codes will have changed. So just to run through, most sites will probably not see this that often because they've already done all their matching over the last number of years. So it might be sort of unfamiliar territory. So if we go into administration and HL7 tests, and then you do your normal import, what you might see is a few here that are unmatched. You just click on the details here and you'll see. So there's an unmatched exam here. If it was an unmatched patient, there'd be a little graphic of a person, but there's a graph there. So that's an unmatched exam or test. Okay. So if I click on match, I'll just match it to test patient first. And then this is what you get. Okay. So this is the exam name and this is the test name. Okay. And this is very important. This exam name doesn't exist on my system. So it's absolutely fine to click on add new exam, right? But what you might find is the exam name does exist here, but you need to search for it and then click on match selected. Okay. It's very important that you don't, if the exam already exists in this list after you search for it, that you do not click on add new exam because it will appear as a separate record in the patient's chart. What you want is for it to match to the exams that are already there. But in this case, I'm going to click add new exam and you can see that it's added the exam. But this is where I think, Mary, most things might actually go awry. If I click on this here, you see that it loads up every single test beginning with C. Okay. And what can happen is basically they will just hit match selected. And they're matching that with the very first test that begins with the letter C. We would get calls about that from time to time. Why is this test called X and Y? And we can spot it straight away because it's nearly always, the second letter is nearly always the first letter in the alphabet, you know, so we know that that's what's happened. So just be mindful that you need to highlight the test on the left and then highlight the actual test on the right that you want to match it to. It will have the first one highlighted by default. That's just the selection bar. You need to select the correct test.
That's a culture.
Yeah. So I probably
CNS result there. That one. Or you mightn't have one in there. You might have to create a new one.
I might have to create a new one in this case. Do you know what I mean? But it's a good example. It's a good example of properly searching and, like I said, highlighting this one. It needs to correspond with this one, whatever that may be. Okay. But in this case, I'm going to add new test, and you can see the new test is there. But
when you do that, Ronan, can I ask you, can you change that C urine to call it culture urine so that, or do you know what I mean?
No,
that's a culture. You can't. You either match to an existing one or
you add a new one. You see that that name is what's come back from the lab. We haven't created that, if you get me, you know. That's what the actual lab is sending back, so we have to stick to that. If we change that, I would imagine, Mary, the next time it will come back, it will be unmatched again. It wouldn't know where to go. I think, you know, so we're best to just stick with the way it is, and that's it really. You'll see then it'll just disappear and it's matched. So, but like I said, it's just to be mindful of the matching, you know. and that it's done right. And if you've any queries, just give us a shout and we'll step you through it. It's no problem. And I think, Mary, you've probably, I've done a dedicated webinar on lab mapping, and I think you've probably distributed that as well.
We
like,
might circulate that for YouTube. Yeah.
Anything else? Anyone else have anything else they want to, maybe something that's not involving the demo? Maybe the practicalities of it or anything like that, the bags, or any questions? No? Okay.
Nuala, you're on mute. Do you want to confirm when you're going to be distributing bags or whatever?
Yeah, we'll distribute the bags according as we are rolling out with various practices. We'll make sure that the bags are available for the practices as we roll out.
Okay,
perfect. Okay, that's all from me anyway. I don't have anything else. If anyone else is everyone's okay with that? And
just to say that the label printing for the sample labeling is still the same process. That I presume that's already been set as one of your defaults running within the system.
The label printing, like I said, it's the exact same as the other hospital. So if I go into lab order and just view it, like you can just print, and it'll print to your default printer. But I mean, you can select any printer you want.
That's for the report form, but I'm talking about sample labels.
Oh, the labels will be the exact same as always. They'd be the red button here. Nothing would have changed there. So all practices would be used to the red label. That'd be the lab label.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. If there's nothing else, I think we can probably wrap it up there. Like we said at the beginning, this recording will be made available and distributed out. So if you have colleagues who couldn't make this webinar, it'll be shared with them as well. But that's it. Thanks so much, guys.
Perfect. Thanks a million.
Thank you. Thanks a million.
Bye.